Grammar tips for business success. So, most of you know that I'm a business lawyer. I focus my practice on helping people buy and sell businesses, as well as contracts um, and helping people set up new companies. But what not a lot of people know is that in a prior life, I was an editor before I went to law school. And so, grammar has been important to me. Written communication, reading and writing for all my life. And really, it's important for all of us, as business people or people who are out in the professional world, because grammar mistakes and spelling errors just look unprofessional. I mean, if you went to a meeting, you wouldn't just roll out of bed, with your hair a mess and throw on a wrinkled T-shirt and cut off shorts. You'd leave a bad impression, and people would wonder about your abilities. And when we send out emails with grammatical errors or spelling mistakes, similarly can leave a bad impression on people. So, and we've all enjoyed these lawcat memes. These cats that do cute things. A lot of times, like this one, they do things that you wouldn't expect a cat to be able to do, like use Wikipedia. But for some reason, they just can't spell right. And so I've always wondered about how smart these cats really are, because they can't even spell. So don't be a law cat. Let's, and that's what I'm here to do for you today is kind of give you some grammar tips and spelling help and put our best foot forward. So I'm going to need Will's help. As everyone heard, for, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my, I was checking to see, I just don't have an ability to do the poll. So Will, if you wouldn't mind putting up the first poll question. The way this is going to work, I'm going to put up a sentence, and then I'll give you, 15 or 20 seconds to register your answer as to whether this is correct or not. And I'll be focusing on one element of the sentence, and that'll be in red. So in this case, I, is that correct? Thank you for inviting Andrea and I to dinner. Okay. And we've got a few answers, and it's unanimous. It was unanimous. We're getting some no's now, or excuse me, some yeses. Okay, so 73% of us think that it's not correct. 3% think it's correct. And the 73% are right. It should be Andrea and me. And so the rule here is you've got your personal pronoun, and it's being used as the object of a sentence. And so you need the object case, which is me. And a lot of us, I think, have had drilled into our brains is from an early age that when you say, like Andrea, you should say Andrea and I, and not Andrea and me. And we kind of overlearned that lesson. So if you're saying Andrea and I are going to dinner, that would be correct. You wouldn't say Andrea and me. But when you're using an object, you need to use the object case. Oops. So if I simplified this and got rid of the compound or object and just say me, I think people intuitively would know that this is correct. Thank you for inviting me. Me is the object of the verb, and so it needs to be in the object case. So here's a list of the personal pronouns, and the subject cases and object cases. So when I is being used as the subject, like I'm going to dinner, use the subject case I. If it's the object, he invited me to dinner, use the object case. So the subject for he, object is him, she, her, they, them. So we go back to our sentence here, and we can see that even though it's a compound object, we need to use the object case. Now, like I said, if you're using Andrea and I is the subject, it would be the subject case. So Andrea and I are going to dinner. Or if you're talking about somebody else going with Andrea, she and Andrea, not her and Andrea, because it's the subject case. Okay, let's go to the second one. So is this sentence correct? And we're focusing on terminates. And the question is, should it be terminates or terminate? So if either the sellers or the buyer terminates this agreement, which is correct? Is it correct? Okay, we still have votes coming in, so I'll give you just a little bit. People had to think about this one a little bit more. Okay, so we had about the right spread as far as yeses and nos. So we've got 2/3 saying that it's not correct and 1/3 saying it's correct. And the 2/3 are wrong. It's actually correct. So in this sentence, the focus is on the buyer terminates. So the question is, you've got a compound subject. So you've got the sellers or the buyer. So you've got a compound subject. And the question is, do you use the singular or the plural of terminate when you've got a compound subject separated by or, and one of the elements of the subject is plural and one is singular. And in this case, you focus on the subject that's closest to the verb, and that's what's going to determine whether it should be plural or not. So the buyer terminates. The buyer is singular, so terminates is the correct answer. So if you switched it around so that the seller is singular, and then the element of the subject that's closer to the verb is plural, you'll use the plural of the verb. So if either the seller or the buyers terminate this agreement. And of course, I think everyone would know that when you've got a compound subject combined by the conjunction and, it makes it plural. So even though seller and buyer are both singular, when you combine them with the and, the subject is more than one person. Okay, lots of fun, lots of fun. Okay, let's go to our third one. Okay, so here we're focusing on EG. Is that correct or should it be IE? So if you think this is correct, choose yes on the poll. So my three sisters, e.g. Sarah, Sandy, and Samantha, teased me when we were young. Is that correct or should it be IE? Okay, looks like we're slowing down. So we will, I guess I can share the results. Let me see. I didn't realize I could do that. Learning as we go here with the poll. So here's the results. Again, interesting, all three of our questions, the spread between one answer or the other is about the same. So, but anyway, so most of us think it's no, and most of us are right. It's not correct. So you would use EG if Sarah, Sandy, and Samantha were examples of a larger group. But in this case, I only have three sisters. So we're not talking about the larger group, we're talking about the whole, we're talking about all of my sisters. So there we go. So IE would be correct. My three sisters, i.e. Sarah, Sandy, and Samantha, teased me when we were young. And how do you know which one to use? So IE means that is, or in other words, EG means for example. So you use IE when you're specifying something specific, and then use EG if you're talking about examples, one or more examples of a larger group. So here's another example of EG being used correctly. Some of my favorite chess openings, for example, the Queen's Gambit Decline and the Caricon, were prominently featured in the Netflix limited series that everyone's been talking about. So here, the Queen's Gambit, Decline, and Caro-Kann are two of my favorite openings, but I have many, many more favorite openings. So these are just examples. And since you're talking about examples of a larger group, use e.g. So here's an example of i.e. I grabbed the one tool that I couldn't do without, i.e., or that is my pocket knife, and ran up the hill. I only have one favorite hill, and you're specifying that, so i.e. is correct. I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I get up to the hill, but I'll have my trusty pocket knife. So here's one kind of way of remembering which one to use that some people use. I.e., which starts with I, means in other words. I always think of it as that is. Other people think of it as meaning in other words. And e.g. starts with E, and it means for example. So I equals in other words, and E equals example. So maybe that'll help you out. So here's our next poll question. So is this correct or not? And the question is, should this be less or should it be fewer? There are less coronavirus particles in the air thanks to my new air filtration system. All right. Well, this is a surprise to me. Everybody said the same thing. We're all on the same page. And everybody's correct. So congratulations, give yourself a hand. Clearly, we're getting smarter as we go along. My presentation is obviously effective. So there are less coronavirus particles. So we're talking about the actual particles as sort of individual particles instead of the coronavirus in the air as a mass. And so we use fewer. If we were talking about coronavirus in the air as a mass, then we'd say there is less coronavirus in the air thanks to my new air filtration system. And here's the rule: use fewer to modify countable nouns. For example, fewer particles or fewer seeds. So if you're kind of thinking of them as individual entities, then you use fewer. But if you're thinking about it more as a collective or a mass, then you use less. So use less to modify grammatically singular and collective nouns. For example, less dust, less grain. Of course, it wouldn't be English if there weren't exceptions. So here's a common exception. This is not incorrect. It would be correct to say fewer too, but here you're talking about individual items, but you still use less. So this checkout line is for 20 items or less. Okay, so here's a little bonus for you. Is this one correct or not? And if you didn't use this, it would be couldn't care less. I couldn't care less about your grammar babble, or is this correct? I could care less. All right. And we are evenly split, which is pretty cool because there's no right answer. So nobody's wrong here. Although logically, I have never understood could care less. The way I think about it logically is I care so little that it's not possible for me to care less. And from that logic, couldn't care less would be the correct. So, but either way works according to the dictionaries, but I don't know, I prefer couldn't care less. And then the last one, the infamous serial comma. So is this correct or incorrect? So when you have a comma, do you use a comma before the conjunction in a series? Now, people have strong feelings about this. I'm sure, you know, computer keyboards are being punished as we speak because you're emphatically saying yes, emphatically saying no. All right. So we have, let me see if I shared the results. There we go. Yeah, most people say no. So either way is correct. It's a matter of style. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I prefer it because I think it leads to less ambiguity and it's more clear. But either way works, although people tend to feel very strongly about it. The one rule, if you read style manuals, for the most part, they'll say that it's optional. The one overarching rule of style in general is to be consistent. So, you know, if you're writing something and you use the serial comma in one sentence, you should use it in all the sentences or vice versa. So be consistent. Okay, and then finally, let's eat grandma. This is a very, very important comma. The comma before the conjunction in a series, maybe not that important, but in this case, grandma is what's known as a vocative because you're talking to her. But if you take out the comma, things just don't look so good. So don't eat grandma, pay attention to commas, pay attention to your grammar, and I'd love to answer any questions that people might have.
Okay, so Brian, oh my goodness, great presentation. And I think that Brian deserves a round of silent applause for his tenacity in getting his presentation done. So great content. It was well worth the wait, Brian. So no worries. You know, technology's wonderful when it works, not so much. And you weren't even sweating with in the shine of your light back there. I'm like, oh my goodness, you made it look easy.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we do have a question from Dale.
Yes, Brian. I've had the good fortune to have a couple of books published, and the editors in each one offer different styles. You know, can you give us some guidance on what to do about that, or how that affects our appearance when we write?
Yeah, the cardinal rule is consistency, like I said. But if you read, there are a number of style manuals. When I was an editor, our style Bible was the Chicago Manual of Style. And that's where we started. The books that we published, though, had idiosyncrasies that weren't covered in the style book. And so we had a house style manual, and that was one of my jobs, was to create that and kind of monitor it. And so we took, you know, we made decisions about optional things in the Chicago Manual style. And then of course, there were things that weren't addressed in the style manual at all. But yeah, you know, if I were submitting an article for publication and the house style guide said no serial comma, my editor would love me much more if I didn't put the comma everywhere, because they'll just have to take them out. So, you know, there are published style manuals. If you're in charge of your own publications, you know, you can find your answers in a style manual. I keep a style guide for my contracts because I have to make, you know, those kind of style decisions. And I want to be consistent over time and in the documents. So, but yeah, I'm sure if you submit things to 2 publications, you'll probably have 2 different answers to some common style choices.